Hello everyone, my name is Barbara and I would like to welcome you all to our latest Novedge webinar episode. In this week's episode, the new Cinema 4D Release 17. Join this webinar to get a close look at Cinema 4D's new features and one of the biggest workflow improvements in recent years, the take system. Presenting this webinar today is Athanasios Pozantzis. Athanasios has been using digital imaging software since 1985, 3Ds since 1988, and Maxon CINEMA 4D for the last 17 years. He worked behind the scenes for UK-based advertising agencies for the last 8 years and then landed in Canada. He's proud to be the first Maxon Certified Instructor and in Canada, and he also won a Grand Epica award in 2005. Congrats. Wow, this is better than the Oscars, if you ask me. So before we get going, here's an overview of what we do at Novedge. Novedge is one of the largest online stores for design software. We offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's need. Put us to the test and come visit our webpage at novedge.com. For more daily software news and limited time promotions, pay a visit to the Novedge blog and follow us on Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. Coming up next week, introduction to BIM for small firms. If you've been thinking about transitioning from CAD to BIM and are looking for a cost-effective and productive solution, Revit LT could be your ticket. Last but not least, today's webinar is free and is being recorded live. If you want to rewatch this or any webinar episode in our collection, just head on over to Novedge's YouTube or Vimeo channel. Great, and now, without further ado, I'm gonna share Athanasios' screen so we can really show you something amazing. And
now great. Everyone should see my keynote presentation. I don't do many of these.
Yes, we do. Take it away, Athanasios.
So good morning or good afternoon, depending on which part of the world you are. And sorry, I'm going to be talking a bit slowly today because I have a sore throat. I've been speaking quite a bit lately. I was in IBC for the last week, and there's a lot of talking going on there. And it was a loud environment, so I just feel like I've left a night club trying to talk to people. So we're going to talk.
Athanasios, your sound went away.
I'm going to go into the full screen mode. Yes? So do you hear me now?
I can hear you now, just for a few seconds. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. So I was saying that we are going to see R17, but we are going to focus on the new take system. And although I have my keynote presentation, I'm just going to keep it like this because everyone can read it anyway. I'm going to avoid the formalities of pressing play and moving forward. And if you don't mind seeing all these little windows as well, so I can see if you have any questions or any raised hand or something. Anyway, let's begin by what is a take system and what makes it so important. So the take system. The take system is not one thing. It's a series of workflow enhancements that allows the user to record and manage different states of a scene in a single document. Mind you, whenever I say certain things, I will show exactly what everything means. So we'll go through the spiel first, and then we'll analyze things. So that includes the states of a scene, includes all object attributes, materials, render settings, procedural file, path creation for render output, global material override, and more. So the take system is a series of workflow enhancements, not one thing. Let's continue. So it's so easy to use that originally we had an issue how to make it look as deep and as integrated as it is, because it works with any third-party renderer or third-party plugin. Maxon has pulled a rabbit out of the hat with the implementation, because you can actually save anything that's keyframeable, and then some. You can save render settings and so forth. And now the take system will allow you to work using different workflows as well, and it will be obvious in a few minutes. So the biggest advantage you get by using the new take system in Cinema 4D is that you will save time, regardless of the type of work you do. If you deal with still images or motion graphics or VFX, or even if you're a hobbyist, and anything that will have more than one version, because we all know that during the creative process that we never begin and end on a single thought. No matter how well planned the whole project is, we're going to have to make some changes or create some iterations. And the take system will allow us to do that with great ease, and we will save tons of time. So tokens, and this is the dollar sign is purposely because it indicates a variable. We go. We can do test renders by changing render settings. Final. I can actually do edit here. That's what I like about these things. Final. My spelling is better than this. Render management. Global material override. This is a fantastic. We'll see. And everything we've talked about is in one single document. Forget about all those iterations, all those different documents. In principle, there's any attribute and parameter that can be keyframed can be taken. No, keyframed is not in my dictionary, that's why it's red. So let me show you, and as I always say, as usual, it all starts with a cube and a sphere sometimes. So this is my screen. I'm going to minimize this now. In my current setup, I have only one screen, so you'll have to bear with me. If you ask a question, Barbara can interrupt me. So this is an empty Cinema 4D document. I'm going to open something very simple I've made here. As you can see, we have it's a dynamic cube with some soft bodies. Okay, this is very quite straightforward. And what we have here, these are the objects of interest. We have, for this example, the art director. Okay, we're going to create an imaginary scenario. Our art director can't really, sorry, our creative director cannot really decide if he wants a cube or a sphere. So we've created the same animation using a cube and the same animation using a sphere. So we have these animation. So already, if we were to continue down this path and create our final animation, we would need, if you were going to render this or do anything, pretty much either every single time go here and click once, twice, or then click twice here and brush down, and click twice here and brush down. We need a certain amount of clicks to visualize one of them and make the other one invisible. Now imagine if you have more iterations or more objects. I'm just going to do this, sorry. Then imagine how many clicks every single time you need to change which of these two objects you want to see. And this is the first very simple case of where the take system is very powerful. And what we do, if you look here on the right, you will see that there's a new vertical tab under object, and it's the take system. So I'm going to click here, and I'm just going to right click and undock it so we can have it in our viewport. I'm going to move my view over there. So what you see here is the whole interface of the take system. And if I open this, then we have these three panels, 1, 2, 3. So let's understand a few things. What we see here on the left, this is the main take. And the main take is nothing more than what we already have in our main document state. If you don't wish to use a take system, nothing at all has changed. You forget about this panel and you continue with your lives, and you won't realize that anything changed. And this is represented by the main take. But let's begin adding a few things, and I'll show you exactly how that works. So because the take system records parameter states or attribute states or keyframe states, what we have here, in order to make our sphere visible, we have to change the state of select the sphere, go to the basic. We need to change the visible in editor and visible in renderer. So this is the state we need to create a take for. So let's begin with our cube here. you can always leave your main take untouched and just create a take where, for example, your sphere. Now, nothing will happen if you drag any object here. What you need to do is make a new take. So you either go on this button, if you hover over it, you will see it says new take, or you go here and you say new take. It's exactly the same thing. When you create a new take, it will make it a child of the previous one. Now, this hierarchical setup is very important for the take system because we have the concept of inheritance. Now, if you don't know what inheritance is, actually you do. You may not know the term. I'm going to create a new document and show you what I mean. If I create a null and then a cube, let me get rid of this, and make the cube a child of the null, and then make a sphere, and make the sphere a child of the cube. There are certain parameters that get inherited down the chain. So if I make a material, which is red, what you see here is the new R17 color chooser. We'll talk about it if we have some time. Now, currently, neither the sphere nor the cube have any materials assigned to them. But if we assign a material to the parent, you will see that this will propagate. So the cube and the sphere inherits the color of the parent, providing they don't have a color of their own. This simple principle has been used in the take system quite extensively. So let's go back. If you lose your take window, don't worry, just go to the Windows menu. And somewhere here you'll find the Take Manager. So I've created a new take, and I'm going to call this take Cube Alone. And actually, because my cube is red, I'm going to name it Red Cube Alone, and I'll show you why in a while. So although we have this take currently where the cube is by itself, I do, for reasons of keeping things tidy, I've created an extra one. Now you can create as many takes as you want, and they can be a real reason to do that. But if you want to have a good organization, it's good to leave your main take, let's say, neutral. Just leave it as it is when you creating the scene. And when you want to start adding things, you can add them in new takes. So what this means here, anything currently in the Red Cube Alone take will inherit everything from the main take because this is empty. How do I change it? Well, let's assume that I was in my main take and there was nothing happening here. We just had two objects, a cube, a sphere. The cube is here and the sphere is behind it. If we go to our take system now and we go, as you can see, you can select it and you can visualize it. I'm going to drop my sphere in here. What this does, it adds all the attributes of the sphere over here. And if I twirl this or unfold it, I think twirling is a term that came from After Effects. But let's twirl this. You'll see we have a sphere. If I twirl the sphere, it has the basic properties. Each one of these folders represents the tags we have on our object. And you can see that all the parameters that are available for the object we dragged in here are over here. Now, this means that we have to deal with a lot of parameters, and it gets a bit messy. So I'll show you another way to add something to the take. I'm going to select the objects and press backspace. And watch this. I'm going to ask myself, what are those parameters which I want to change? I'm selecting the sphere, going to the Basic tab, and it's visible in Editor and visible in Renderer. But you can see they're grayed out. I can't really touch them. The reason is you can't touch them because they're inheriting from the main take. So one of the interface elements you will see in regards to the take system is that if your parameters are grayed out when you select a take, that means they just inherit what the parent take is giving them. And how do I override them? There are a few ways. I can just drag it under the take. So now, as you can see, it's editable, which means that every other parameter which is gray is inherited from the previous parent take, but this one we can change it. So I'm going to make this off, and I'm going to select the sphere again, and I can do the same thing with the visibility in Renderer, or I can right-click on it and override. It's exactly the same thing. I can either drag it here or right-click and override. And you will see here if I twirl. Now the only two attributes we have available in our Take Manager is the visible in Editor and visible in Renderer. Of course I can change it here, or I can go here, double-click and change it here, or I can select it and change it here. It all depends on how you prefer to work. This little panel here shows us the attributes that are available to us for each and every one of these selections. So it's your choice. Good, so currently what we've done is the following. I would like you to pay attention to what's going on here. When I select the main take, everything is visible. When I select the red cube alone take, the sphere is invisible, so the only thing visible basically is my cube. So we have a red cube alone, and we are fine. How do we add a take that has a sphere which is visible and a cube which is invisible? Just go to the main take, click on this, it adds a new take, double click, red sphere take. And we're going to repeat the exercise. Because my main take is generic and everything is visible, all I have to do is take the high-res cube. And I can go down here, I can select both of these, I can right-click and override. It's going to add both of these parameters. I'm showing you more away just with one.
Athanasios, your sound disappeared.
Do whatever you want over here. So now, yes.
Okay, it's back.
Away from. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, so you lost me for about
5 seconds.
Oh, you lost me for 3 or 4 seconds, 5 seconds.
Yes.
So what I said is that I selected both attributes and right-clicked and added them to the override. So you can do a shortcut. I'll do it again. So in my red sphere take, I drag my cube, actually not my cube, I actually select these two. You can select these even in standard other versions of Cinema 4D just by pressing Shift click. With these two selected, I right click and I override, and I can change the parameters to off and off, and you will see that now I have a generic take where everything is visible, a red cube where only the red cube is visible, and a red sphere where the red sphere is visible. Did someone ask me a question? So let's see, I saw just Barbara, I guess. So this first level, I guess it's quite straightforward. All we have to do is create a new take, and the override concept is that we drag any parameter we want to change in that take, and only that will change. And as you can see in one document now, this is only one document, I have 2 different states. Now, where is the benefit of that? Well, with 2 objects, it's kind of visible. I mean, we did quite a few clicks to get to this point, but it gets more interesting the more complex our layout is. And what do I mean? Okay, we have 2 versions, a cube and a sphere, but they're both red. What if we want to try a version of each with a green color? Suddenly, our versions become 4. And without a take system, and if we need to add a few more iterations, you can easily go to 8 or 16 different scenes and different iterations. Let me show you how we will add more takes with different color. So if we go to the red cube alone, since we can work only with a cube, there we go, so we see a red cube. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it's a cube. What I'm going to do is go to this cube, right-click, and add a new child take. A new child take does nothing more than inherit from this one, and in turn this one will inherit from this one. If it's not a child take of the one I selected, then it becomes a sibling just like everything else. But in my case, because I want to keep the change I've done here, the overrides I've added here, I want to create this as a child take, and I'm going to call this, double-click here to copy the name, double-click here, I'm going to call it green cube alone. So any overrides, and the override I can add are the following. First of all, I'm going to my main, and I'm going to copy this object, green, and then double click and change the color. So now I have a green material, and you will see that because one general rule, sorry, I forgot to say, is that the takes, we cannot insert new creation. If you want to create new objects, so to speak, you will have to use a method like this, like hiding the other ones and so forth. But there are quite a few tools to help us do that easily. But anyway, I added a new object, material is a certain type of object. And then in my red cube alone and my green cube alone, what I want to change basically on my cube is from the material tag, I want to change the material. This little link here links the actual texture tag with the material. So what I'm going to do, obviously, I'm going to right click here and override, or drag it here. I'll undo and do this. I'm going to go here and drag it in the take. And you can see that we have the texture, and I'm going to drop the green one in here now. You can see I can do it here, I can do it here. I'm not going to repeat this. Same for the sphere. I'm going to go to my red sphere, add a new, where's my new child take? Right click, new child take, and name this green sphere alone. And here I'm going to go to my sphere. I'm going to drag or right click or do exactly whatever I want. Go here, select this, drag the green one. So now with just a few more clicks, I've managed to have 4 iterations. I have a red cube, and mind you, the animation stays the same, no problem. And you can actually change takes while it's animating as well. It's not a real problem. So this illustrates, to begin with, the power of the take system, and even in the most simple of situations. Now there are a couple more things we can look into. For example, the auto takes, or this little button here. With the auto takes, when you have a new take, let me show you the interface. So let's assume that, let's see what we can add here. Let's add another third color version. So I'm going to go back to my main and make a double click a blue color. Call this blue. And I'm going to close this. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go right here, right click, and add, actually on the red sphere, I'm going to add a new child take. Call this blue sphere. And instead of doing that whole thing, dragging the sphere up here and so forth, I'm going to turn on the auto takes. I'm going to go here, and you will see that when you turn on the auto takes, what happens is that sorry, I'm in the blue sphere. What happens is that these turn blue. The ones which inherit from a parent become blue, but they're editable. They just show us that the value they have is the value that the parent take has given us. Whereas this one, because we are actually making a child take, well, we can just go and drag it and drop it in here, just like we work with auto keyframing. Just don't forget to turn this off if you don't need it. So very quickly, using the auto takes, you can make very quick iterations of your scene. So in just 1.5 click at a time, we can create so many iterations. Now there's a question about this. Okay, and I've created these iterations. How do I render them? Well, how do I do this? Luckily, with the take system, they've introduced the so-called token rendering system. And what this does is the following. Let me go to my keynote and look at this. These here are variables, and these variables, we're going to go through them in a second. These variables are actually added in our save path over here. So let's assume I have a PNG sequence, and I'm going to render, I know, the first 10 frames of my animation. When I go to save, you will see that the interface has changed, and this little arrow now is available. This has all these, the list of these little attributes I was going to tell you about right there, so you don't have to remember them. And $PRJ, let's do this. Let's go and find a folder. I'm going to go to my desktop. If you see anything you shouldn't see, just forget it. Renders. Okay. So we have a folder called renders. Actually, I didn't create a new folder called renders. I'm going to create it now. And Cinema 4D can do it for us, mind you. If you add a slash here, the renders will be created as a folder. And let's see, because I want to differentiate when I render all these things here. Definitely, I don't want to render each one, and each save would override the previous one. So I need a way to differentiate between each and every one of these renders. So that's why one of the tokens name, providing you've named your takes. This is a take name. Providing you've named your takes uniquely, you can actually do that here. I'm going to do backslash and go here and say, where is it? Take name. There you go, my take. Oh, I should put this, my take. That means that if I just render one frame of my takes, each file will be named after this. And let's try it. And actually what I'm going to do is just put the first frame so we don't do too much. So you can see that we've added a variable here, $take underscore test1, which is just a name. And what I can do, I can go to the render menu in my take system, and I can say render all takes to picture viewer. And let's see, let's do that. The document contains dynamic simulations. It always, when we have dynamic simulations, it's a good good practice to bake them, but I have baked them. It just warns us that better bake them all, but I have. So I'm going to press OK. And watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 renders of the same frame named after each take, plus test 1, plus the frame, pressing one button only. And the same happens to animations. Let me show you how we go and do an animation. What you can do basically, I'm going to go and copy this, and I'm going to turn the $take name into a folder by just adding a slash. And then I'm going to paste the name here. So what this is going to do, let me show you the folder first of all, just in case someone is doubting what we just did. You can see we have the renders folder and we have the main test. I'm going down arrow so you can see all the different iterations. Okay, and you can see this one and this one are the same. You can see from the name, because this is the main take, that everything's neutral. So here's something, maybe you don't want the main take. How do you render everything except for the main take? Well, it's very simple. You just go here, click on these, and instead of saying render all takes, you just render mark takes in picture view. Excellent. So this is going to render only this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Good. So let's go back here. So we're going to have in the renders folder now. We can leave these as they are. We can delete them. We're going to have a take name folder, one for each take, and then a take name animation. I'm just going to make this 10 frames each, and go here and say render marked takes to picture viewer. And of course we need to bake, and you can see that it's rendering take 1, and it's already put it in a folder. Let me just go up. Let me just go up and up and up and up. You can see that each one gets placed in a folder, and the folders are created, and inside each folder we have all the frames we need. Fantastic. But, oh, it's already done. Yeah, it was a quick animation anyway. So by pressing one button now, you can have all these iterations. And at any given moment, and this is the interesting part, if you've set, since you've set this to $take, and it will create a new folder, if you add a new take anywhere in the take manager, and you just render out again, you don't have to worry about the names too much. And there's another little trick you can do here. Because one of the attributes is the actual project name, cube, O1A, and so forth. Even if you do save iterations of your scene for backup purposes or anything, you can include in your naming the PRJ, $PRJ, the document name, which means that every time it starts a new animation, instead of renders here, you can have $PRJ. So now on the desktop, actually I'm going to add the renders. So I don't have everything on the desktop. Renders. So on the desktop, we have our renders folder. In the renders folder, we're going to have a $PRJ folder. In that, we're going to have our take name folder. In that, we're going to have take name underscore test1 and so forth. But you can see how much more simpler our life becomes. We're not worrying, excuse me, about overridden files and outputs, and the margin of error is very low because you have everything in front of you in one very good manager. So let me show you a few other things. One of my colleagues, Nicodim, he gave me, maybe you've seen this, Hooked. This was a great little animation about an octopus which was beatboxing until someone caught it with a hook. And his company is called Cybertime, and he's a fantastic Cinema 4D user. If you look up Cybertime and Hooked animation, you'll find it on YouTube. So he was kind enough to provide me with his octopus. Yeah, interesting stuff here. So yeah, this is that part where he gets hooked. Anyway, so this happens is that depending on what we need to do our post-production, there are things, and in this case what I'm going to show you is the director is not sure if he wants these little rings here to be this color, but he wants to make his choice in post. He doesn't want to tell the user take the texture and repaint it or change it, because this is a photoshopped texture that's been applied on the octopus. So with a new take system, we're actually able very simply to create a new render pass, let's call it, a new take that only contains one object or one material. So I'm going to Window, Take Manager, and now we have our main scene. And if we go here, you will see that our main scene is rendered with physical renderer. It has all these multi-passes, and it saves here and it saves here, and all sorts of things. I want to be able to do the following thing. So in order to do that, I'm going to add a take, and I'm going to call it Octo for octopus mask. Okay, and actually circle mask. Good. And I'm going to keep the main take as it is, so nothing's destroyed. And what I want to do is the following. I've already have here a material that has a luminance. Let me go back to see, everything is grayed out because I'm on the take. I have a luminance channel of basically this here. If I press edit, it's going to open Photoshop so I can see what material I'm working on. And let's give it a few seconds. Got one channel and used levels. So I have a mask here, and I want to create a render pass where everything else is black, and the only thing that's rendered is with this black and white. Now there's one detail about this. I don't want to render it in things in standard render. It's very fast when we don't have effects. So I want to make sure my take here is not going to be rendered using the physical renderer. How do I do that? Well, one thing you can actually take is the take render presets settings, and you can go here and you can say, okay, I'm going to call this standard, and the reason I'm using child is that I want everything I don't touch to inherit it. Sorry. So good. I'm going to close this. It's going to be standard render. I'm going to call this mask render. Good. And because now it's a standard rendering, actually it inherits everything else from the parent. So it's going to be 1280 by 720, all the resolutions, everything. And the ranges, everything I haven't touched is going to stay the same. And how am I going to apply this to my take? So currently I'm on the main take, and this needs to be on render. But if I go to my Octo mask, and if I go here, you can see that I have a list of the two available render presets. So press on this and say, I want this take to be rendered using the mask render. And you can see that when I click here and here, over here, it changes. Okay, and of course if I select it, you will see the change parameters. And now let's go and change a few things and show you how you can do certain things in a very easy manner. So if I want the octopus with the circles, first I want to make everything else invisible. Now we can't delete the objects, okay, mind you, we can't delete the objects. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a group override. So go override and, override group. It's actually this button here. Now the override group, if we twirl it open, it says new group. And the way this works is quite simple though. You can see it's different than any other overrides we have because it has the visibilities, the same visibilities we have here. So anything we drop in here, we can actually turn it off from editor and renderer without touching it over here. And the other thing you can do, you can go and add either a texture tag or compositing or display or external compositing or any of these you want. And you do that to any object of the group, which you can add or delete at any point. So I want to add in this group everything that's not basically the octopus. So how do I do that? Well, octopus is here. I can take all these things here and drop them in this group. Right, you can see everything is in here. And let's see, I'm going to make them invisible in renderer and in editor. And they're gone. There you go. I can always add some kind of compositing tag and make them disappear. I don't care. Oops, I forgot an object. All you have to do is just drag it in here and it's gone as well. Fantastic. And the next thing I want to do is go to my octopus and just change my material to this little thing here. So there are quite a few things I can do. I can go to the last of these and just say, okay, I'm going to go here and drag this material in my take. I can drop this material in my take. I can drop this material in my take. And then I can go one by one and add this material. Actually, I don't need the eyes, so the only thing I'm going to do is just delete it from the take and just make sure that the eyes are going to be added to the group. There you go, because I don't need the eyes. And if I render this now, you see it's going to be quite fast because it's standard renderer. Whereas if I render this one, it's going to be as slow as it needs to be. But at the same time, I'm going to have a very quick take with only the mask I'm going to use. And I can use this in post and do any changes I wish. So that's another way to use a take. And nothing is destructive. At any point you can just select your take and get rid of it if you don't want it. No one's forcing you to use it. But it's fantastic how we can do all sorts of things like iterations. But let me continue and show you a couple more things you can do. For example, a shadow pass. This is a very frequent request by users. We don't have a shadow catch object and this and that. Well, now with a take system, it's equally as easy to create it. All you need to do is just know what you're doing. So I'm going to go, let's say here, and add here, I'll add a new take. I'm going to call this pass. Fantastic. And my shadow pass, basically, I need to make sure that this material has a very, this object down here has a very specific material that only catches the darkness of the shadow. And let's go and create it. Let's go and create fully white material here. That's it. That's my shadow catcher. Diffusion with a bit of ambient occlusion here, so you can catch diffusion helps very much to catch when the object is close, the contact shadows. And I'm going to enable luminance and reflection. That's a general rule of mine. And let me see now what we need to drag in the shadow pass to make this thing work. So first of all, I'm going to create a group. And in this new group, I'm going to add the objects which I don't want them to be viewed by camera. And basically, I need to find my floor here. My floor is, there you go, the light setup, the shadow catcher, there you go. It's called this shadow catcher. And what I'm going to do basically is drag all the objects of my scene in this new group. Because I can't go selecting around things, I'm too lazy. And I'm going to go, let me, except for the light setup. So I've got everything except for the light setup. And so everything in the scene except for the light setup is in the new group. And all I have to do is go here and add a compositing tag to them. And if I click on this compositing tag, which is going to be applied to everyone, you can see there's a little T here, because this is an override. It's a take compositing tag. And I'll say don't see by camera. If I do a quick render down here, you can see that we can still see the octopus. And there's a very good reason for that. If you go to the octopus in here, you will see that we have already these tags, which means that although we've gone to the actual parent and added a tag, because these have their tag already, then it will override the parent's tag. But that's not a problem. I can get the objects which I want to override and just go and select this and go scene by camera, add it to my shadow pass, and add a few more of these, this one and this one. Now, I hope no one complains that it's too many clicks, because we've saved quite a few clicks here. If I render now, in theory the octopus should be gone. Fantastic. The same thing I guess applies for the microphone. And the microphone, where's the microphone? Microphone, oh no, it's not the microphone actually, it's the stand. There you go, I knew it had one. Drag this in here and just make sure that it's invisible camera. And now, only the floor should be visible. Fantastic. Now, one thing which is not, it doesn't relate to the actual take system, just so that you know, when you have a light setup, when you have a shadow catcher, all you have to do to make sure you never put your color in the luminance. Never. Put it in the color channel. When you're using objects to catch shadows and so forth, put it in the color. That's the way to do it. If you're using a sky for reflections or a background object, never put it in the luminance. Okay, I'll explain it probably in another webinar. You select this and you just activate the compositing background. That's what you need to do. That's the correct way. That's why this was put here. And that way what will happen is that the actual shading will be ignored. The color will be taken into account. But because the color is in the color channel, if we use GI, it won't actually emit color. So it's quite important to do that. Plus the fact that if you put 100% luminance, it won't catch shadows. So now we have a pass that catches the shadows. And depending on how fast we want this to render, we can always go and create an extra render setting that has something different. I don't know, maybe some sort of speed up. Maybe the physical renderer has a few samples and so forth. And maybe we can do it. New child. Call it shadow catcher. And I'm going to select it and get rid of the multipass and go to my physical and say, okay, I don't need many blurry settings. Maybe I make this 1 or 2. Anyway, I'm not going to change anything now because it's just for illustration purposes. And don't forget to go to your Take Manager and make sure that your shadow pass has that shadow catcher setting. So I'm just going to make it obvious. I'm going to turn this to standard, although it's not good practice. But anyway, just you can see it. Go render in standard. So these are a couple of things you can do with the take system, and there's a plethora of information on the internet that will allow you to do it. We're not finished yet because there are a few more things that are not takes per se, but again there are the great R17 features. You get the idea. That's my point. You could use groups and overrides and auto takes to do your stuff, and it works with team render, and it works with team render basically, all marked and so forth. So let me show you one more thing that has to do kind of with what we're doing here. Oh, I shouldn't have closed it. Let me go back to my main take. And this is something that has been requested quite a bit from many users. Now, if I go to my render settings, you will see a new little bugger. Let me turn this off. I'm not going to save it anyway. And regardless of which renderer you're using, you're going to see this little tab here that's called Material Override. Now, this is extremely powerful, and depending on your workflow, it could be a lifesaver. And what this does is the following. If I just turn it on and I render, you can see by default, I'm getting everything in white. Let me show you how this works, because it's quite fantastic. Sometimes when you want to check something about your scene that has to do with the lighting, basically, you need to get rid of all reflections and all sorts of other effects and keep just the raw geometry with any displacements and so forth. And this material override allows us to do that. So what you can do, currently the custom material is empty, and all these are activated. If I turn these off and render, look at this. We get this generic Cinema 4D gray looking thing, and everything else is there, shadows and all that. So let's create a material. I'll call it temp. What a unique name. And I'm going to make it kind of what's it called? Pale apple. And I'm going to add in the diffusion channel subsurface scattering. So, whoops, ambient occlusion, not subsurface scattering. I never use subsurface scattering, it's too slow. Good. And what I'm going to do is drag this in here and press render. Now everything's going to be rendered with this material. So we can choose if we want to make a clay render or something like that. Any material we want, drop it in here and everything's going to be rendered with it. But as you can see, we don't have the detail we had here on the octopus. And that's why we have the preserve. This makes the whole thing extremely worth it, because we can preserve anything we want from the attributes of the object. So for example, displacement or bump. Let's just go bump and normal. I think this one doesn't have displacement, but anyway. There you go. Now we can see the bump and the normal. We can preserve alpha channels by default, the ones that are gray. We can transparency, of course, and displacement. So we keep the object shape and the main structural attributes always the same. And yeah, this is as simple as it gets. And there's one more interesting part of it, the exclude mode, or include, as we have in Cinema 4D. You may want to see everything overridden except for this material. Render. Is that my right? No, that's not my right one. Sorry. I think this is the one. And instead of looking around, I can always go here. This is what happens when you're a bit lazy. You have to do things many times. There it is. If you double click, you know, it becomes... Yes. So instead of doing it the proper way, I had to do it. Oh, well. There you go. So everything now has the override color, except for wherever this material is applied. And for test renders, or even testing the mood of a shot or the lighting of a shot, and so forth, it's very helpful because you can do, for example, let's get rid of that, and you can do a pure white ambient occlusion render, just so you can see the lights. Or you can go here and say, no, you know something, I'm going to put a luminance, and is this going to render anything? Yes. Now you can only see your ambient occlusion here. So if you want to create passes with ambient occlusion and so forth, you can fine-tune it just by going to the material override. And because the material override is part of a render settings, you can actually create new child render setting and have it render a very specific pass. So now you can create passes which are custom based on anything you want. So you can pretty much add to the multipass system by creating your own passes. You can create masks for particular objects. You can create all sorts of things. It's a new technology, and I'm pretty sure you guys are more capable of coming up with ways to abuse it, which is basically your job, to abuse these things and come up with great art. So we only have 10 minutes. Before questions, I'm going to do an extremely quick run-through of what else we have. Let me see if I forgot anything to say here. And yeah, the tokens, to override all the second document. Good. The final render management with the tokens is combination, and you can do test renders. You can even, let me show you this, because people sometimes forget this. You can create a render setting where the renderer is actually hardware. So you can create an animatic for your client and just change your render settings, and have a few material tweaks here and there. And yeah, so a quick rundown of some of the new features, and then I'm going to be around to answer some questions. So first of all, if you go to the splines here, you will see we have new spline tools, and there's been an overhaul. You can see we get a preview, and basically it's much easier to work with splines, and it closes automatically and all that. Now what I like is that suddenly they decided to add sculpting features in the spline. So if you do any artistic work, you can go to sketch here and you can sketch, okay, no problem. But you can go to smooth spline, and basically you can smooth your spline, great. But smooth is only one of the features. This has been undersold. Smooth spline is not smooth spline. It's smooth or flattened spline, or random spline, or pull spline, or spiral spline. And for any of you artists that use splines quite a bit, now you can actually, and even project. We can project it on an object dynamically. So you can do all sorts of things with splines. And then we have a spline arc tool where you can create arcs. Fantastic. And you can use a snapping system and all that. Yeah, it's extremely powerful. I think it's the most powerful spline tool out there. So that is one of the things. Let me just refresh. We have the color chooser. Quickly, I know we're running out of time. If there are any urgent questions, just raise your hands, or Barbara, just shout at me. Now, everywhere we have the color chip now, we have this new color chooser, which is extremely powerful. We have all the settings here. So currently I'm watching it in hue, saturation, and brightness, or RGB. So I can click RGB, or I can shift click and I have both modes, or I can have Kelvin as well. And then I can add a mix, so I can have one color here, and find the mix, and then I can have swatches. Now that's all nice and dandy, but then I can actually have a color wheel. Now this color wheel allows us to select a color, and we can see it selected over here. And look at this, suddenly over here we have a selection. Then I'm going to select another color like this one. You can see that little color chip changes. Now anytime I've got the color I want, I just press plus, and I have a second color. So I have two colors now, and it goes on and on. You can just add colors to your swatch, and you can right click and change the size, and you can actually go monochromatic, where you select a color within the range of one color. Then you can go complementary, and you have then all sorts of analogous color based on certain degrees. You can have all sorts of modes to select the proper colors. I mean, here we can add as many as you want, and you select one color, and you have all, I don't even know what these are called, complementary, something like that. But it's one of the most powerful color systems. Now you can have it in a square, and you can go here, and you can actually select an image. Out of this image, you can, this is a fantastic render done by the Arnold renderer. And what you can do here, you can pixelate it, which means that it's the same image, but it allows you to go and select a color. So you can go here and say, I want one more. Well, there you command click, and all these colors are added to your palette, and you can just, I think, right click and save. There you go. Left click and save. So you can save these. So now we have swatches as well. It's very deep, and you can do all sorts of things. And again, everywhere you can select colors in Cinema 4D, not only materials but anywhere else. For example, display color automatic here and so forth. We have the new color chooser. So in modeling, we have the new spline tools. Basically, in sculpting, we have some enhancements. Go on the Maxon website and check them out. They're quite interesting things. Yeah, and we have two very powerful new shaders. One is called the variation shader, and the other one is called the formula shader. And yeah, I think overall, as a quick overview, and oh, and the last thing, which I won't show you anything, unfortunately, it's a bit too much to show it. The animation has received enhancements, so we have a built-in Euler filter. For the motion tracking, we have a new way to find and refine our tracks. Anyone that does 3D motion tracking should know what I'm talking about. We have undistort lens profiles, and generally the animation workflow that has to do with F-curves and keyframes. We have two modes now. We have the timeline, which is called the dope sheet, and we have the F-curve as a separate one. And it has some new features. I would suggest go take a look, and anyone that does do animation will find them as very welcome. So, on that bombshell, if you have any questions, I'm willing to answer them.
So Athanasios, yeah, thank you so much. I've heard a lot of great presentations, but I don't think I've ever met presenters as enthusiastic as you are. So this is really, it was a great show.
I'm a fanboy of Cinema 4D.
You are. So there was one question somebody asked, can you do the group with layers? And it referred, I'm not sure, you were working on the octopus.
Take. With a take, yes. Yeah. Layers are takeable. Yes, layers are takeable. So anything you do with the layers, you can. Oh, let's go and do it. Might as well. So let me just put this down very, very quickly. Let's add some kind of new layer, and let's go to our take manager very quickly. And as far as I know, you can take the layer and drag it here. So now we have layers, and we can do exactly the same thing with the layers, turn them on and off and so forth. So yes, layers is one of those things which is takeable. And we can take include exclude lists as well. So if we take a light and in the light we have an include exclude list here, the list is excludable. The objects in the list as well, we can right click and override and so forth. So yeah, layers and many other things are takeable.
Awesome. Will material override support V-Ray?
Sorry, material overrides?
Well, material.
For V-Ray?
Yes. Will V-Ray be supported?
Anything. Okay. Yeah. Anything that can be either keyframed or can be put in a render setting or a layer can be taken. So the way the take system has been made, I don't have V-Ray now to test it, but the way it's been made is that if you can add that material override as a render setting that has a specific V-Ray setup, so you'll just go here, create a new child, go to your V-Ray settings and change that, then it will work. If it doesn't, it's something you have to take up with the V-Ray for Cinema 4D developers. But I think by default, if it's supported here, it's going to be supported by the takes.
That's fantastic news. Okay, I think that's it for question. I think I will give you a break. Your voice, held up.
Yes, I'm going to have a hot tea now. Anyway, if anyone wants to find and see what I do, I basically teach. Just Google Noseman. One of my biggest accomplishments of life is that if you Google Noseman, I come up first. So anyone that can beat that.
Wow.
Anyway, thank you all for being there. Yeah, there's great information, and I want to thank Novedge for giving the opportunity to show these fantastic new features. And
No, thank you, Thanasis.
honestly, just yeah, people are going to save time now, and that's amazing. They can put it in their art, they can do more stuff and all that. I mean, forget all the other features. I don't care. The take system is something that, had I had 5 years ago, I would have been 5 years younger. Anyway, thank you very
Wow.
much for hosting us, Barbara.
Wow, I'm taking the screen back. Sorry about that. And I would like to thank everybody for attending. And I want to remind everyone to visit our page at novedge.com to where you can find Cinema 4D, the latest release 17. Novedge is the best way to buy design software online. And also for information on many other specials and new releases, join the Novedge network on Facebook, Google+, or Twitter, and subscribe to the Novedge blog. Don't forget the next week's webinar is about BIM for small firms with Revit LT. And to rewatch today's webinar or previous one, check out our Novedge YouTube and Vimeo channels. Our webinar playlist has webinars for every software taste. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you, Thanasis, and
Thank you, Barbara.
have a
And anything you need,
wonderful.
just contact me.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day or night, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye.